EQ is, without a doubt, the most powerful tool when you're mixing or mastering. Used correctly, it could augment everything you like about a mix. Used incorrectly, it could quickly ruin it. By the end of the video, you'll know a lot more about equalization and how to use it in ways that you haven't seen discussed before. So let's cover the science of perfect equalization. But before we start, if you want to get your mixes to sound like professional songs, I encourage you to check out our mixing and mastering membership. Just for signing up, you receive 50 free mastered songs a year with your own dedicated mastering engineer, unlimited mixing feedback, and access to Sage Audio University for in-depth mixing and mastering education courses. But more on that at the end of the video. Let's start with EQ and the ADSR. So equalization and the attack, decay, sustain, and release of a waveform are typically thought of as very separate concepts. However, they're linked a lot more than most engineers think. In short, the attack and decay, or the transient, often occupies different frequency ranges than the sustain and release. Although some instruments have a transient and tone that heavily overlap in their frequencies, some instruments have very distinct ranges for each of these two parts of the ADSR. So let's say I'm equalizing an 808. The transient of an 808, or at least for this particular sample that I created, has more 2 kHz than the tone does. If I amplify 2 kHz, I do amplify the full ADSR or the waveform. However, by amplifying a range that makes up a significant portion of the transient, I'm emphasizing the transient. Whereas the 2 kHz range of the tonal aspects will likely fall below our threshold for hearing when played in the context of the mix, even after amplification, the 2 kHz range of the transient will now cut through a mix and make the amplitude of the transient louder overall. So let's listen to this example and notice how amplifying 2 kHz increases our perception of the attack and decay, but it doesn't do that for the sustain and the release. Next up, I want to talk about how EQ is not subjective. So if I were to ask, how could I use this EQ to increase a vocal's clarity? The correct answer is not, it depends. The conical shape of our ear canal, its circumference, and the diameter of our eardrum amplify 1 to 5 kHz by about 10 to 15 dB. Looking at the latest loudness contour studies, this dip near 3 kHz indicates that we're most sensitive to this range. So increasing 3 kHz on a vocal will undoubtedly increase the clarity. The same goes for any instrument in this range. Furthermore, 300 Hz is the most prominent masker of higher frequencies. Because it masks or covers up 3 kHz, we can attenuate it to reduce this masking, in turn increasing clarity. So let's listen to a track and notice how boosting 3 kHz while dipping 300 Hz quickly increases the clarity of any signal that's equalized.
I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go. I couldn't take the weight of it anymore. If you see me, it won't really be me, no.
Next, let's cover how to make natural compression with dynamic EQ. So the middle ear has a really intricate method for protecting us from loud sounds. If something is too loud, the tensor tympani and the stapedius muscles contract and attenuate the level of incoming sound. It primarily does this for frequencies below 2 kHz. With that in mind, we could use a dynamic EQ and create a low shelf filter that dynamically attenuates that range. For a more realistic effect, use a multiband dynamic processor and again, create the filter below 2 kHz. This time, set the attack time to between 25 to 35 milliseconds and the release between 70 to 115 milliseconds to emulate how long before the ear muscles contract and how long they stay contracted.
I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go. I couldn't take the weight of it anymore. If you see me, it won't really be me, no.
Last up, let's cover 4 creative ideas for EQ. So because EQ is such a powerful tool, there's really so much that we could do with it. For example, if we're mastering, we could create 3 instances of the file and use linear phase EQs on each to isolate the lows, the mids, and the highs. Then we could add processing to each range as we see fit.
I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go. I couldn't take the weight of it anymore. If you see me, it won't really be me, no.
Or if we're working on vocals and we want a crisp sound, we could first send the vocal to an aux track, isolate the highs with a linear phase EQ, Then compress heavily and blend the result in with the original. This is how a lot of rap vocals achieve a bright and detailed high range.
I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go. I couldn't take the weight of it anymore. If you see me, it won't really be me, no.
Or say we want super clean sounding de-essing. We'd create a send from the vocal, isolate the sibilance range with low and high pass filters, and create a dynamic bell in the middle that triggers whenever sibilance occurs. Then we'd invert the aux track's phase and blend the track in with the original to cause mild phase cancellation whenever there's sibilance.
I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go. I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go. I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go.
Or one of my personal favorites, I could tune a vocal with EQ. Since each note is a fundamental frequency with a set of overtones, I could find in-key notes and use narrow bell filters to amplify the notes. If I wanted, I could also attenuate out-of-key notes. EQs with a piano roll at the bottom make this a lot easier by letting you snap the center frequency to an exact note. Listen to how this vocal sounds more in tune after having its in-key notes amplified.
I sold my brain to the state, I had to let it go. I couldn't take the weight of it anymore. If you see me, it won't really be me, no.
As I mentioned earlier, if you want to get your mixes to sound like professional songs, I encourage you to check out our mixing and mastering membership. Just for signing up, you receive 50 free mastered songs per year with your own dedicated mastering engineer, direct one-on-one mentorship that's tailored to your specific needs, unlimited mixing feedback to help improve your mixes, and access to Sage Audio University for in-depth mixing and mastering courses. Your dedicated mastering engineer will learn your sound and craft masters specific to your preferences, and you also get unlimited revisions to ensure that every master sounds exactly how you want. Inside the membership, you'll have access to the Sage Audio community, which is full of passionate producers and engineers ready to have meaningful discussions, network, and collaborate. The membership also includes over 70 gigabytes of downloadable content, including mixing and mastering chains, multi-tracks for mixing practice, recommended free plugins, recommended paid plugins, and plugin presets. Use the button below today to join the membership with a 70% discount and start creating mixes that sound like professional songs.